Hello, everybody. It's James here, WSI, my next guest. Normally, I have an intro pre-prepared, but actually, I'm going to do the intro of what a lot of people wrote in when I said that Jerry Lynn was going to be a guest on the show. So, basically, one of the greatest wrestlers there ever was and doesn't get the recognition he deserved. Former ECW, WCW, WWE, Ring of Honor, TNA wrestler, and current AEW producer, and also in the running for the title of Nicest Man in Wrestling, it is Jerry Lynn. Good morning.
Nice. Careful, I have a reputation to uphold. No, I don't know how to feel about when they say nicest. I'm a normal human being. I've had a few explosions like Mount Vesuvius at work at some wrestling shows here and there once in a while. I think it happens about every 8 to 10 years, and then I'm good for a while.
Does the wrestling business drag it out of you on occasion then?
Uh, well, that's funny because the first time I met Roddy Piper was at TNA, and I saw him after the show at TGI Fridays. That's sitting at the bar, so I was like, I'm gonna go take advantage of this opportunity and pick his brain. So I plopped down next to him, and we talked for a while, and finally I said after a while, I said, you know what? I said this pro wrestling thing is a real love-hate relationship. I said sometimes I hate the fact that I love it so much, and he said that's a great way of putting it because it gets frustrating at times.
What do you see? I don't want to go into the negative straight away, for goodness sake.
Oh, no, I don't mean to. It's just, it's like any other job. It's a job.
Because quite a lot of people have asked, with your agenting, what your pet peeves and stuff like that. But I promise you we'll get to that a little later on, because we were talking off air about doing seminars and you're straight to the point, and bless you for that, let me tell you as well. So, but we'll get to that a little later. Quite a lot of people, I solicited questions for this, and an unusually large amount of people wanted to ask you about music. So for maybe the first time ever, maybe the first time ever in the 100-odd interviews I've done for this YouTube channel, we're going to talk about music. So
Great.
We've got this might almost be quick fire because I am no death metal fan. I don't know about death metal, but Jay Fabe says death metal Mount Rushmore, please.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, geez, that's a tough one. That because there's so many. I'll just give you a few. I hate doing the Mount Rushmore because there's so many, but I love in the death metal genre, Dying Fetus, a newer band, 200 Stab Wounds, an older band, Sinister. Oh gosh, oh, there's so many, but that's just a few. But I like all genres of metal. I like all music. I mean, I grew up pulling out my dad's albums of Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Fats Domino, stuff like that. And then throughout the years, it just, I don't know. Always liked a little bit of everything. Even like some country, like Brooks and Dunn, Alan Jackson, Mary Chapin Carpenter. Just little. I like bluegrass. Grew up. My dad listened to a lot of bluegrass, so it was always, of course, Bill Monroe, Ralph Stanley, Flatt and Scruggs. Just it's a little bit of everything. It just depends on what mood you're in and what your surroundings are and stuff like that.
A certain Brian from South Philly says, "What's your favorite Kelly Clarkson song?"
Well, of course, Since You've Been Gone. Yeah.
Any messages for a certain Brian from South Philly?
Yeah, tell him hi. Miss you, love you. Yeah, that's an inside joke. We were in their local watering hole, and they had the jukebox, and I don't know if it wasn't their local. Anyway, we had the jukebox playing some good rockin' tunes, and I always just for shits and giggles slid in a Kelly Clarkson song, and I watched when it came on, and Brian's now wife, she was when it came on, she's looking around with this disgusted look on her face, like, who the hell played this? And I'm in the corner bouncing up and down, just jamming out. So she never let me live that one down.
You could have said that you meant to click on the rainbow since you've been gone, at least. It's just a slip of the finger, buddy.
Right, yeah.
Next one. Aaron Goodman says, how did you learn to do those guttural vocals?
I just played around with it, and I even tried doing some of when I'm alone in the car, I am awesome. So, but I enjoy it so much. I just wanted to try it, and I use the term sing very loosely, but sing along, with the Cookie Monster vocals and stuff.
He also says that Judgment Day is so iconic, but we'll be going to that in a minute. Or later on, at least. Higgler writes in and says, did you pick out your own theme music in ECW? And if you had to pick a new theme, what song would you choose today?
Oh, yeah, I did, and it was funny. I told Randy, the sound guy, this is the song I want to use, and he told me, he says, Paul, he says it's too heavy. I said, too heavy? I said, this is ECW, and so they let it stick. And I chose when I went to Ring of Honor, I chose another. It was a melodic death metal band called Dark Tranquillity. I think they're from Sweden, and it was a song called "The Wonders at Your Feet." And it started out with this epic sounding intro, sort of like a Japanese entrance music would sound before it kicked into the death metal part. So it wasn't as scary for. I didn't want to pick something that was too scary or too hard for the masses in Ring of Honor. So I picked a more tame melodic death metal song. But I've used other stuff, like there's a good, and I love industrial metal too. And there's this band from New York City called Hansel and Gretel, and I've used a couple of their songs too. So it just varies. To me, it's got to be something that's got a very short opening before, and then finally kick into the funky groove or whatever. Just don't have too long of an intro before you get to the meat and potatoes, you know.
That's absolutely right. The Racing Genius says, what's the story behind using a death metal scream near the end of ECW? Also, was the famous no, that's something else. Forget about that. So the death metal scream near the end of ECW.
I don't know. Polly, I think, told me, he says, just, at the end of your promo, do that death metal growl or whatever, just to give it a good final oomph.
Rick C says, hi Jerry, been interested in looking up matches you were in, especially during your ECW run. While looking up that on YouTube, I stumbled upon the ECW album music they once released. On the Anarchy Rocks album, you introduced on those songs as your new song, which was El Kukui. Is it El Kukui or El Kukui by Coal Chamber?
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. My question is, did you actually use the song during your time in ECW? Not a lot of video evidence online showed you ever used it when you were with the company.
No, never used it. I think they just threw my face on that song in the CD jacket or whatever.
Oh, so there you go. This is yours and no plans beyond that?
No.
Okay. Right then, so that's the sort of music round up with now. I'm sorry, I was sort of like...
I could talk music all day.
I know, I was slightly nodding along with it because I'd never heard a single band you mentioned. Kelly Clarkson, though, I'm all right with. Next one. Right, so we're going to go to the early days, as we always do. We do it fairly canonically, if I can say that word. First job in pro wrestling. So obviously you're going to be trained somewhere. Where were you trained exactly? I didn't even write that down.
In Minnesota, Brad Ringens trained me.
Oh, so with the AWA, was he still affiliated with AWA at that time?
I don't think he was then. I don't think at that time he was, because I think he was. I'm trying to think. I think he may have been done. Was he? No, he wasn't done wrestling completely, but by then most of his career had always the last large portion of his career was in New Japan. He tagged a lot with Masa Saito, but I think he was nearing the end. But I don't think he was affiliated with the AWA. I don't think the AWA was really, they were still running. So I can't remember if he was still training people for him or not.
Yeah, you wrestled for the AWA a couple of times as well. But
yeah, we would, a guy I went through camp with, Tom Burton and I, we would go to the warehouse, get the ring, bring it to the Rochester Civic Center, set it up, do 3 squash matches each, tear down the ring, bring it back to the warehouse.
Speaking of squash matches, if I can get it out there, I'm tongue-tied today, WWF. I love it when I find out that someone at the beginning of their career has appeared on Wrestling Challenge or Superstars or whatever it may be. I love these stories. So, I'm not even going to tell you who it was. Do you remember who you wrestled? It was a single taping, Wrestling Challenge, May 16th, 1989, and you had 2 matches. Who were the guys?
Yes. The first match was a tag match against Big Boss Man and Akeem, with the Slicksta managing them. And if I remember correctly, the second one may have been Bad News Brown. I can't.
Rick Martel.
The Model Martel. Yes, Rick the Model Martel. Because I know I did a couple times, went and did TVs and did squash matches for WWF.
Rick Martel was also managed by Slick. What did you do to piss Slick off that day? You faced like every single dude on his roster.
I don't know. Who knows?
So as I say, I love the stories about WWF, doing the enhancement stuff. How did you
Yeah.
end up getting the gig? Who recommends you for that?
I think Ed Sharkey got a bunch of us local guys when WWF would come to either close to town. Like I think the first one we were up in Duluth, Minnesota. And then I think the second one was in the Tri-Cities area. But yeah, Eddie would line those up. And it's funny when uh when we have extras come to AEW and they're all together while they're getting told the do's and don'ts and whatever. And then when they're done, I'll go and shake hands with everyone. And once in a while, I'll say, like, they'll say, well, you got any advice for them? And I'll tell them, yeah, I say, when you're out there in the ring, even though it's an enhancement match, I said, look confident, look like you're there to make a name for yourself. I said, when my first squash match in WWF, it was against Big Boss Man and Akeem. They were both they're 6'6", over 300 pounds. And I looked like a scared child. I said, don't do that.
Do you know what you did do though? Was turn up in shape at least, because most
Oh, yeah.
enhancement didn't actually bother with it and had like at least some respectable gear.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the dudes would turn up, 400 pounds, they're built like a pear, balding mullet, which I love, by the way. I mean, I love those kinds of enhancement guys who come in, but at least you turned up looking decent but young, so you definitely had more promise. How terrified were you?
Oh, I was scared. I mean, not as bad as the very first time I wrestled, but I guess it was just I didn't want to make it screw up and make anyone mad. And of course, you always want to do a good job.
You say the do's and don'ts. Did you get a list of do's and don'ts before you were out there with Twin Towers and whoever else?
Not back then, not really. I think we all knew what our job was, and we just usually had our own room. And oh, that's another point I was going to make was whenever I see the group of extras, I always make sure I go say hi, introduce myself, and shake hands with them because I'll never forget. First time in WWF, we're all of us extras in our own room, and the Bushwhackers came in and went around and said hi and shook hands with everyone, and I'll never forget that, just to make us feel comfortable and welcome.
Uh, do you have any interaction with Bad News Brown or Rick Martel or the Twin Towers before you go out there? Do they give you any advice or just say, don't get anything in, I'm just going to eat you up, or was there no like pre-planning in that sense?
It varies on each guy. Like when I first saw Bad News Brown in the locker room, I went up and introduced myself, and I said, "We'll be working together." And he says, "All right." He says, "I'll talk to you a little bit later." And he laid down and took about a 2-hour nap. So, and he pretty much just said, "Listen, listen," because back then a lot of it was called out in the ring, so you just listened, and you usually knew what the finish was. Oh, there was one time with Big Boss Man and Akeem. He said after the pin, he says, "Now I'm gonna handcuff you to the rope, and I'm gonna get my nightstick out." He says, I want you to fight me. He says, "No one ever fights." He says, "I want you to fight." So when he was getting his nightstick out. So after he handcuffed me to the rope, and as he's pulling his nightstick out, I'm kicking at him, I'm swinging at him and everything. And then finally he gives me the shot with the nightstick, and we're done. And I get to the back. As soon as I get to the curtain, he's standing there waiting. And he said, "Thank you for fighting back." He says, "No one ever does it." And he gave me the biggest hug. He was so happy that I
Oh.
fought back. Yeah.
Did he? I actually watched that match before interviewing you today, and do you know what? He looks like he took very good care of you, quite frankly.
Oh, those two really opened my eyes up to what professionals are. I mean, it was an amazing experience. I'll never forget it. It looked like they were destroying me, and they took care of me.
With that being said, so you get to the building that night. Who is sort of like the concierge? Who's the guy who sort of shows you where you're going to sit and who you're going to wrestle, that kind of thing?
Oh gosh, back then it may have been like Rene Goulet would tell you who you're working with and stuff.
Let me have a look. Everybody took care of you, I'm presuming. Now, this is a money question, I know, but do you remember how much you got paid for?
Yeah, 350 for the day.
That's not too bad.
No, back in '89, that was a decent payday. Just and you never knew. So, and if you didn't even get used, you still got paid that 350 just because you went out there, you made the trip there. But then you never knew whether you're going to have one, two, three matches, you know.
Did anybody recognize you because it was the same day? Did anybody recognize you from the first match to the second, or call your name?
Oh,
or
the
anything?
fans?
Yeah.
Oh, well, back then, you know, there would be like about 32 or 34 squash matches. And at the end, you'd have maybe a tag match with four superstars, so the people would stick around to see that match. But it was run like clockwork. It was like a conveyor belt. You and your referee would be passing the other jobber and his referee in the aisle. That's how quick they kept the matches moving. So, and every time you went out for your next match, the fans would be on you. They'd be going, "You still suck. You're still gonna get your ass kicked." And you're like, I know."
We just walk.
But
Were you just agreeing with
yeah,
everybody on the way down the aisle?
yeah, I'm like just waving. Yeah, you're right. I'm about to get my ass kicked. You know, but each time, especially if you had three, each time it got worse and worse. They would really lay into you. It was hilarious though.
Why didn't you do any more? I think you only did a couple of TV tapings. Was this something where you thought, well, if I carry on doing this forever, then I'm going to be pegged in this role forever?
Oh
Sort
no,
of thing?
no. Um, I'm trying to think of the time frame because oh, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert got a hold of me and asked me if I want to come down to Memphis. So, and this was after I'd already done the TV tapings and squash matches. So he brought me down to Memphis over the winter of 90 and 91.
Hmm.
And then when that was done, I went $1,200 in debt. I said, all right, time to move back home and get a regular job to support my wrestling habit again and get myself out of debt.
Memphis is going to be coming up in a second. AWA, though, Philip Henderson writes in and says, when you came to the AWA, what were there any positives while you wrestled, and what was the pay like during the dying days of the AWA as well?
Oh gosh, I can't remember what the pay was, but it was decent. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it, I don't think. I don't know. Yeah, you know, we were always very fortunate back then because like Ed Sharkey, we worked like Sean and I when X-Pac, when he was a Lightning Kid, we had a good 2-year feud up in the Midwest. And uh, we were very fortunate back then. Eddie would get bot shows. He never gambled on the house or anything. So he always got bot shows. So, and especially for just starting in the business, we always got usually at least $100.
Hmm.
So, which isn't bad for someone just starting.
With the AWA, was Vern still hands-on at this point? Was it mostly Greg at this point who was sort of running the show?
It was still Vern. Yeah. Yeah, he's quite the character. I didn't get a chance to, interact with him much. I was always taught, keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut and just do what you're told.
How many matches did you have in the AWA? Because, and also, did you ever wrestle in the big pink empty room?
What was the big? No, wait. What's the big pink empty room?
So I don't know if it's like the Team Challenge series. This is like in the last weeks where they just
the
had no
experimental
fans.
thing.
Yeah,
was it with the background of the crowd on a green?
Oh, that's something different.
Okay, I did that one day. We did the experimental green screen where they put the crowd and they didn't have the technology then. It looked horrible, but I didn't do the big empty pink room or whatever it was. I don't know what that is.
I think it was like in the last weeks, and they claimed that there was too much interference from fans running into matches, but actually they just couldn't get anyone to the TV tapings.
Oh,
so they just did it in a giant pink room.
No, I didn't do that one. I don't think I was. I think I was done doing squashes for them by then. Because I after Memphis, then we did. Oh, then Eddie Gilbert brought Sean and I back down to Dallas to redo our feud in Global. And then after that, Sean and I started going to Japan quite a bit for that lucha style company.
I read on I hate this. I read on Wikipedia, but I read on Wikipedia and it claims that you were the very last person to challenge Larry Zbyszko for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship before he went back to WCW. Is this true?
I don't know. I heard that too, and I never realized because I wrestled Larry twice in the AWA. But I didn't realize that if the second one, he may have had the belt, yeah, but I wasn't sure if it was for a title match or anything.
I was going to say, yeah, did you realize that the belt was on the line?
Probably not. Probably because I knew there wasn't a chance in hell I was winning anyway. So it didn't matter.
How were the crowds in like the last year in AWA? I'm sorry to harp on about the AWA. I'm
fascinated by the last month. I loved the crowds back then were still great because the curtain hadn't been pulled wide open yet, so a lot of the fans still believed it was real, which made it great, and it just made it magical. And I feel bad for the guys now. They're never going to experience that and experience real heat when the fans are pissed off at you and want to see you die and stuff. It got scary at times.
When was the last time you experienced real heat?
Oh gosh, probably. Hmm. Actually, I think in TNA when we brought in X-Pac to redo our feud, and we did a thing after the pinfall where he got up, and I mean we had it heated because of, and we even brought in the real story of our past into the promos and stuff. And I'll never forget the first promo we did. I mean, we were bringing up really some personal stuff, like when we would hit the road together, and I pulled Sean aside and I told him, I said, listen, uh, I said, I'm going to say some things in this promo that were real back then, but it's all water under the bridge. I don't, it's nothing now. And we talked about it and we were all fine with it. And so we brought up stuff like, when he got the big break and went to WWE, I never heard from him again. And then, like he forgot all about me and I wasn't a big enough superstar to be his friend anymore and stuff. And I told him too, I said, there was a lot of local guys and stuff and a lot of people who thought I was jealous that he got a big break. I wasn't jealous. I was happy for him. I was thrilled. And I told him that. And, so we brought up in the promo stuff like when I said, you forgot all about me and you forgot that when we would go on the road, my dad would watch your son, Jesse, when he was still, and boy, that promo, he got hot and said, don't you bring my son into this and blah, blah, blah. And it got really, the promo came off great because it was a true story. And after we were done, it was dead silence. And I know it was maybe Russo and Bischoff, and I don't know who else was there, but everyone was just like, their eyes were wide open, like, where the hell did this all come from? But we couldn't use it because it went too long. So we had to redo another one. We had to redo another one. And it probably didn't come off as good as the first one, but it still came off good because our whole angle in TNA was a true story. And at the end of that pinfall, he jumped me at the end. He made it look like he was all sorry and we, hugged it out in the ring and stuff. And when he jumped me afterwards, I think some of the fans were pretty pissed off. So I think there's a little bit of heat there.
You never had anyone trying to jump the railings, though, in TNA after you?
Not in TNA. Years and years before, Sean and I were wrestling each other at a VFW show. And so it was a small room, no rails, no security. And I'm chasing Sean around the ring. And this guy gets up in front of me and picks up his chair like he's going to hit me. And Sean, quick thinking, like, grabs the chair from the guy and threatens me. So I get in the ring and we continue the match. Well, we got another spot. I'm chasing him around the ring. This guy gets up in front of me and I step to the side. He steps to the side. I step to the side. He steps to the side. And I put my hand on his arm and I said, move. And the guy grabbed me by the throat. So I just gut wrenched him, picked him up. I slammed him on the floor. We got back in the ring, finished the match quick and got in the back. And the promoter asked me, he goes, do you know that guy? And I said, no, I've never seen him before in my life. He says, well, you better call the police and press charges before he does. So we had the cops come out and they more or less just scared the guy off. You could tell he'd been drinking. But I found out that day I could have been sued for protecting myself because in past lawsuits, the wrestlers are held accountable for getting the fans' emotions all worked up. So I found out the only place they're fair game is in the ring. So you just gotta, if they attack you, block it, get in the ring, and if they come in the ring, now they're fair game.
There was well, the thing is also is that they've got to climb through the ropes first, which is just always head first, prime.
Oh yeah,
prime attacking. The most defenseless sort of position, I guess. Just were you saying that in the early '90s? I mean, 5 years earlier, I think it sort of started with the suing culture because I think Jim Duggan got sued for punching a fan, or maybe it was Mid-South. I think it was WWF. The Midnight Express got sued around 1990 for doing the same thing. So things were really, really changing. You sort of just came into the business just on the cusp of the territory days into the independent days. to the suing culture days, I guess, as well, where you could get $1,200 in the hole, I guess, very quickly, as you said before.
Well, that was just because that was, and weren't getting paid a lot that
Yeah.
time. And a lot of it was all driving. I had a gas guzzler car and, stuff like that. But, back in I love the territory days. And one of the first things they taught me was in Memphis was watch out for the little old ladies in the front row with a purse because they'll put a brick in their purse and try and clock you with it.
Did they?
So yeah,
Did,
that's how much heat there was back then on the heels. Is you didn't get too close to the fans where they could be within arm's reach. That would be stupid if you did. Then you're just asking for trouble. So you kept your distance.
I always like that really non-threatening piece of rope to separate.
Oh yes. Yeah, the world class with the Von Erich and Freebirds. They just had that little rope that cracked me up too.
That'll do it.
Yes.
Well, we're actually going to go to Sean Waltman as well. L Dude has written and says, your matches with the Lightning Kid, Sean Waltman, have become well regarded. How important were those matches, or how did they impact your career in the early 90s? Now, I want to add this, is that you sort of became one of the very first indie darlings. And I don't know if you hate that term or whatever, but I sort of think that you and Sean X-Pac were two of the first indie darlings as far as the newsletters go.
I don't, that's nice. At least word got around because back then there was no internet, and no cell phones, no social media. So it was hard to get word out, But Sean and I both, we talked. It was probably the night of the, when he inducted me into the Indie Hall of Fame. We talked and we both agreed if we wouldn't have run into each other, we don't think either one of our careers would have went anywhere because it was still Land of the Giants and we were like two of the smallest guys back then. And so luckily, because he went through Malenko's camp in Tampa and he heard there was a wrestling scene up in Minnesota and his grandparents lived up there in Minnesota. So when he moved up there, he and I clicked right away because even back then, even guys on the indies were all big guys, well over 6 foot tall and 250 pounds, jacked up giants, and a lot of them looked at us like we were too small and they didn't want to work with us. Or they would take liberties with us and see if we had what it took and we're going to still come back and show up, stuff like that. So when Sean and I met and we just clicked and we would get together just about every day and watch whatever tapes we could find of anything, Japan, England, Mexico, and we just loved all pro wrestling and we just wanted to incorporate all the different styles in our matches.
Did you did you and Sean ever become like a package deal? So you book one, you book the other, just because you were comfortable with working one another.
Not maybe. Like I said, the indies were different then because it was hard to get the word out. So it was always just word of mouth. And I was always taught too, Brad taught me, always have a resume in your bag, who trained you, what indies you've worked for, stuff like that. Because actually, when you're trying to get a gig, you're trying to get a job. It's a job. So always have a resume with you. Always have 8x10s. And back then it was have VHS tapes of your work. Now you can have the little stick or whatever, and I did. And I think that's how, Eddie Gilbert discovered me and brought me to Memphis. So I made sure I had that in my bag because you never knew who you were going to run into and you just hand stuff out. But as far as the package deal, I think the only time was when we were going to Japan for that Lucha company. They brought us over as a tag team to work with. Yes. At the time, it was Takayama and Akiyoshi, and who became Jado and Gato later on. Mm-hmm. But so we feuded with them early in their career for that Lucha style company.
Can you say hand on heart, because I know you watching tapes, getting ideas, of course. Can you say hand on heart that you and X-Pac invented any moves or sequence of moves that you see commonly today?
Boy, not really. I don't think we invented anything. I think what we did differently was just merge a little bit of lucha style, Japanese style. And we even used submissions before submissions became huge, but it was hard to get people to pop on submissions unless you were on weekly TV and established it as a finisher, But I don't think we didn't invent anything new. I think we just added a little more action into the wrestling and into the matches. Because back then we wanted to make it more exciting and fun. And not just for the fans, but for us too, because a lot of the big guys were just fine and happy with just doing a hip toss and a clothesline and a body slam. Well, let's make it a little more exciting.
John Falketta has written in and says, how did you feel wrestling in the Dallas Sportatorium when you were with Global? And also adds his matches with Sean Watman were ahead of their time.
Oh man, I remember because I grew up watching wrestling. The first time I saw wrestling was in 1969. I'm aging myself now. So I was 6 years old. I was adopted at 6 finally. And um, that's the first time I saw pro wrestling. It was the AWA because you couldn't get, I didn't even know there were other territories. And so I grew up watching the AWA, and I'll never forget the first wrestlers that just caught my eye was like the Crusher and Baron von Raschke and Mad Dog Vachon, and and I always loved. I don't know why this one jobber named George Scrap Iron Kadaski. I don't know why I liked him. I just liked him. But and then and you also had Jesse the Body on there and stuff like that years later. But ever since the first time I saw it, I loved pro wrestling. Never thought about doing it, but I always loved it. And and then it was every weekend too. It was before pro wrestling was roller derby. Loved roller derby too. But
similar businesses as well, really, aren't they? In a sense.
But what was the question? I know I'm rambling.
Dallas Sportatorium.
Oh yeah. So here I grew up watching the AWA, and I didn't know about other territory except when I finally started buying some magazines like Pro Wrestling Illustrated and stuff. And I would always only buy the ones with the bloodiest covers.
so Dusty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the one, I think, Hacksaw Butch Reed and who was it? Junkyard Dog had this bloody feud, and I probably bought one of those with the bloody cover. But so in the early 80s, we finally got cable. And then it opened up a whole nother world for me. Then you could see every territory that I didn't know existed. I mean, you had World Class in Dallas with the Von Erich Freebird feud. You had Portland Championship Wrestling. You had Continental. You had Mid South. You had Georgia, Florida Championship. I mean, I couldn't believe how much wrestling there was, and I couldn't get enough. I loved it all, and I remember, and of course the NWA and stuff like that. But
was it the Joe Pedicino block on cable? Was that it?
That was the UWF, I think. No, Joe Pedicino was global. Yeah. Wait, no. Yeah. Didn't he do global?
I can't remember. Yeah,
I think it was Joe Pedicino.
Yeah. Didn't he host something where it was basically like an 8-hour block on cable of like every territory for a while?
I think so. Yeah, I think
with
you're
like
right.
Bonnie Blackstone or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was his wife. So, and I remember every territory then was hot. The fans were just going rabid. And especially during that Von Erich Freebird feud, I couldn't get enough. It was amazing. So the very first time I stepped foot in the Sportatorium, I was in awe. I just stood at the top of it, and it was a very unique building. Outside, it looked like a big giant tin pole shed. Nothing glamorous about it. And inside, it was like an indoor amphitheater where all these wooden benches were concreted into the floor in like a circle around the ring. And it was just a very unique building, hotter than hell. It was brutal, but I just stood at the top and just looked down at it all and just imagined it packed with those fans just going nuts. And it was just, the first time I stepped foot in that building, you could just feel it and feel the nostalgia. And it was just amazing. I just love walking into old wrestling venues.
I've heard that the old Sportatorium was delicately put a shithole. Is that about right?
Yeah,
that's fine. Historical shithole, but
Well, that's funny. That's the first thing I said when I walked into the ECW arena in Philly one time. I walked in there and I go, "Yeah, they're right. It is a shithole."
Okay, this is just random, but did you ever stick around after the shows for Midnight Bingo? Just once.
I didn't know that. No, there was no Midnight Bingo. We didn't get out of there till I don't know what time.
That was the joke, anyway. I think there was bingo.
Oh, if there was, I would have loved it. I love playing bingo if there's money on the line.
Oh, God, yeah.
Well, maybe not, because if you don't want to piss off the little old ladies, they take
brick in the handbag.
Seriously.
Brick in the handbag.
There you go. They take their bingo seriously.
The only times I've ever played bingo were on cruise ships, and that they exclusively have got old people on them.
Oh yeah,
aggressive bingo players. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
we're. I know. I'm sorry to say that I'm sort of hitting, because you've got such a varied career that we're only hitting some of the highlights, I guess. But
that's okay.
We're going to go straight to WCW. So, Straight away, how hard is it to work in a mask?
The first time I wore a mask, I mean, I already I asked Brad, he had me come down and help out with another camp, help train some of the guys. And I asked Brad, I go, Brad, it's been 7.5 years. I go, what do I got to do to get a break? And he says, well, the business has changed now. He says, it's all about TV. You got to come up with something visual that's going to grab people's attention so they won't change channel. And that's when I was thinking, I'd already been going to Japan quite a bit and saw a lot of the cool mask gimmicks over there. And I thought, well, no one in the States is doing it. And I knew the Power Rangers were huge on TV at the time. So I was working in a screen printing shop and I was good friends with one of the guys in the art department. So asked him, I said, I paid him to help me come up with a design. I said it wanted to be kind of like Power Rangers, but kind of alien like. And he came up with this design and I couldn't find I found a commercial. You couldn't, there weren't a lot of gear makers back then. So I went to this commercial company that did anything from wedding gowns to choir robes to you name it. So the labor was very expensive, but they did the outfit for me, but they didn't know how to make a mask. So when I went to Japan, I brought the outfit with, and this was for the Mask Man tournament for Michinoku. And I showed Sasuke my outfit. I said, I want to get a mask made from MIE, the top mask maker in Japan, for this outfit. And I showed him the artwork and stuff. And he said, okay, but he said, please wear our mask. You know, they had a mask. They wanted me to wear that go to cross mask. And at the very first time I wore the mask was that first day of that tournament against Super Delphin. And we were on the floor and those buildings over there didn't have air conditioning or heat. And it was hot that day. And I'm on the floor. And it's the first time I wore a mask in a match. And this was one with the mouth open too, thank God. But and your body's heat cannot escape your head. So you get hot real fast and you'll get winded real fast too. And I started on the floor, like almost panicking and hyperventilating. I started untying the laces on the hood. And I told myself, all right, take some deep breaths, relax. And then I made it through. But yeah, the first time was rough. It was like almost getting claustrophobic.
Yeah, you never you did wear a mask with no mouth opening at one point, didn't you? Or did it always have
No,
a mouth
I always
opening?
had the opening. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how they can do it without. I had to have it open.
No, this is for nothing, but a local band that I'm friends with all wear lucha masks while they're playing. They do surf music. For whatever reason, they just decided to wear the lucha mask, and they say
What are
the
they
same
called? That sounds familiar.
thing. They're not big. They're a local band called the
Okay.
Unshaggables. So there you go, a free plug for my friend's band.
So if they wear the mask, does it make them shaggable?
No, they haven't got
No,
the body.
okay.
They haven't got the bodies. It's fine.
All right.
They're all late middle age, let's say, and in Hawaiian shirts and masks. Right. So you go to WCW. You're Mr. JL sometimes. You're Jerry Lynn the other times. Did you get paid double?
No, no. I just got my weekly pay,
Yeah.
which was fine. Which was fine.
Were you guaranteed?
Yes, I just got a weekly guarantee pay.
That's not too bad then. Eric Bischoff first.
Well,
time.
except the one tapings we did. We did usually TVs. We would do 7 days of taping and do 4 1-hour shows each day, either at Disney or Universal. And then after each hour of taping, they'd empty out the crowd and bring in a fresh crowd for the next hour taping. Well, one week, I don't know if they were ribbing me or what, probably ribbing me, but I worked 2 of the days, I worked 4 matches each. And another 2 days, I worked 3 matches each day. And another 2 days, I worked 2 matches each day. And then the last day they had me work, I worked 1 match. So uh, one, in 7 days, I had 19 matches. And I had to drive all the way back from Orlando to Atlanta, where I was living at the time. And I couldn't stand up straight for a few days. I was a hurting unit.
And they didn't bonus you.
No.
Well. How hungover were you on those tapings?
There's a couple days. I was pretty hungover. The one day they ribbed me because I think the whole company was out partying the night before at this dueling piano bar. So I think everyone was probably hungover. But so they ribbed me. I had 3 matches in a row of each 1 hour taping. The first match was Otani from New Japan. Second match was Kanemoto from New Japan. The third match was Kensuke Sasaki from New Japan, and I think they were testing me. And after the last one, Terry Taylor says, "I didn't know you could hang with the Japanese guys." I said, "Terry, I've already done 7 tours in Japan." But they were ribbing me because they knew I was pretty hungover, but I survived.
So three of the lightest guys that you could ever work with.
Well, the first two weren't bad, but Kensuke Sasaki, I think he was trying to touch the canvas through me on every stomp. It was brutal.
Did you ever, with these tapings, did you ever have to reshoot anything?
No. Hmm.
You're lucky because I know there are quite a few instances in Buff Bagwell or Greg Valentine that I don't know if a match went wrong or whatever. They just said that was terrible. Get out there, get out there and do it again right now. And then they just got to turn tail and just walk straight back out.
I have never had to do that.
Good man.
But I'm not perfect. I've had several appearances on Botchamania, and I've heard the "you fucked up" chants many times. But so I'm kind of proud. After a while, I got pretty good at covering up my fuck ups. So,
or you meant to do it.
yeah. Just stand up and go, "I meant to do that." Yeah.
Very briefly with WCW again, when you're Mr. JL and there's the cruiserweight thing sort of happening 95, 96. Were you specifically hired for a cruiserweight division that was sort of forming at that time, or you just happened to get in at the right time for it?
I think it was timing. Plus, like when I first started, I was on a nightly deal, and that's what I hurt my arm, came back, and I was the only guy with a mask. But when I came back 9 weeks later, now they had a dozen luchadors. Now a mask meant nothing. But they used me a lot to work with a lot of the luchadors because I think back then there weren't a lot of the American guys who could, knew how to base on the moves and do that style.
First time meeting Eric Bischoff, was it a fairly cordial affair? You say, we're going to pay you this many dates, turn up at so-and-so, or were there like plans explained and what they were going to do with you in the future?
I can't remember how that came because I met Eric he was still at the AWA when I was there. And then I cannot even remember for the life of me when I talked to Eric about coming to WCW. And I'm sure it was over the phone or something, but yeah, it was fine. He told me what I'd be making. He said, but you have to move to Atlanta, which I did.
Begrudgingly, it sounds.
Yeah, and well, not really. I mean, at that, I was just happy to, have a job in the business, even though, I wasn't happy how it all ended. But when it was, there's a little bit of bullshit that went down at the end, but, and, and I wasn't happy how it all went down. And in this business, we always think we deserve more. And I talked to Eric years and years later, probably, gosh, I don't know, maybe it was about 6, 7 years ago. I ran into him at a convention up in Duluth, Minnesota. And I told him, I pulled him aside and I said, Eric, I said, I don't know if you've heard or read any of them or something, but I buried you in interviews and stuff. And I said, I just really wasn't happy how the way things went down at the end of WCW and stuff. And he says, no, I understand. He says, I was a different person back then too. He says, I apologized to him. I said, when I look back, all you did was give me a job and a payday. And, and we're all cool. We're cool.
Was it, I don't know the circumstances, but were you just a victim of a bloated roster, I guess, at that point? Was that pretty much it?
That could be part of it, but there was other parts, but I don't want to get into it. It's all water under the bridge.
That's absolutely fine. Most underrated wrestler of all time, says Leaf King, and he says, what is your recollection of the match you had with Sabu on WCW Nitro?
Oh, was that Halloween Havoc or I think and the Sheik was with him, his uncle.
That's going to come up in a second. The old Sheik,
Sheik
Fireball. But do you remember the Nitro match specifically?
Not really.
Okay.
Oh, vaguely. Yes. And it's funny when I watch back, it was like, well, a lot of it didn't make any sense. We were just doing moves for the sake of doing moves. But when I do seminars and stuff, I'll even say when I go back and look at certain matches, sometimes like some of them with RVD, I go, man, those matches could have been so much better. But I realized you can only work with what you know at the time.
Let's get to the Fireball. And the
Okay.
Sheik. Okay, so I'm not Buck Terry has said a two-part question in. When did you find out the Sheik had gotten hurt during your match with Sabu at Halloween Havoc? And I'll ask the second one afterwards. But so I vaguely remember this, but you're gonna have to sort of tee up the whole story for me.
Oh, so we had a spot right at the beginning of the match where I think great, I'm trying to remember. It's Sabu is walking down the aisle. I'm already in the ring. Sheik is trailing behind him. And I don't know if I did a dive or something, or we started out on the floor, and then Sabu ended up doing the acai moonsault off the rope. And he didn't even tell Sheik about the spot. And so when he collides into me, we fall into Sheik and knock him over. And I didn't know at the time. I didn't don't think I knew until a day or two later. Sabu said, "Yeah, we broke his leg." So finished the match with a broken leg. But when I realized what had happened, I thought he was carrying that big saber. I mean, we could have got impaled with that thing or something. So that was the scary part. But then, uh, yeah, after the match was done, I didn't even know. I'm laying there by the ropes, and all of a sudden I feel all this heat and this bright flash go across my face. And at first, I didn't realize what it was. Then finally, I realized, oh, he threw a fireball. And so it was probably a delayed cell or something because I didn't even know it was coming. He didn't say anything. And as soon as I get in the back, Kevin Sullivan's there just screaming, going, "Did you know about that?" I said, "I knew nothing about it." He said, "We could all lose our fucking jobs." Because I think they told him not to. Well, Sheik's going to do whatever he feels like. I think they told him no. And he still went ahead and did it anyway. But it's kind of an honor. I think I'm the last person that got a fireball thrown in the face by the Sheik. So
The second question was, how does it feel to hold the title of last man to ever take a fireball from the Sheik? Do you brag about this very distinguished honour?
I just did.
There you
No,
go.
no, I did. I just, yeah, it's one of those, it's almost like a highlight in your career.
Did the mask restrict your sort of like peripheral vision, and that's why you didn't quite know what was coming in that sense?
Actually, it had all kinds of little holes in the eye thing, so it was like looking through a screen door. But on the sides, yeah, it was a little restricted. That's why I always hated when someone would grab me and go to pick me up by the hood. Now I got to readjust it so I can see right. But yeah, you could see a little bit on the peripheral. Not bad though.
Did the Sheik speak English to you in the back, or was
Well,
he
yeah.
still? I was just going to
Wait,
ask if he was just
should I
still sort of being
kayfabe? Should
silent.
I
Yeah.
kayfabe? No, he spoke English.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was in the. I mean, he lived in where, Michigan?
Hmm. Bombay,
I don't
Michigan.
know. Yeah. Well, oh, there you go. And, he was big throughout history in the States, in the old St. Louis territory and stuff. So,
The reason I ask you that is because apparently, obviously with fans and stuff, he would never break character. But I was wondering if ever around certain other people in the back, that he wouldn't break character as well. But he was just dead, I guess.
yeah, I don't know. I guess it only if someone he didn't know was around or fans were around or someone in the back you didn't know for sure were they in the business or not.
Got a bit of a follow up question as well. It's a follow up question with nothing to do with what I just said, so it's not a follow up question. Anyway, Mark Wren says, "Wrestling as Mr. JL at Hog Wild. What TF was that like?" That was your match with Dave Taylor for a Saturday night taping that happened at Sturgis.
Yeah, it was a quick little quickie match. I knew it was but I love Dave Taylor. He's a great guy and learned a lot from him. But um, I I loved Sturgis because years ago, like I said, when I said I worked at a screen printing shop, the owner of that shop was an old biker dude, and he was the president of the MMRA or something like Minnesota Motorcycle Riders Association. So while I was working in that screen printing shop during Sturgis, he would print up a bunch of shirts, and we would go to Sturgis and set up a booth and sell T-shirts. And so I'd been to Sturgis before, and that was probably in 92, 93, and it was before Sturgis became real commercialized, should I say. It was still just bikers and it was a different world then. And one of my coworkers was an old biker dude, and he even in the screen printing shop had an old Harley. He took it apart piece by piece and rebuilt it in the shop. And when we were up there selling the shirts, he let me hop on his Harley and ride around Sturgis. And it was one of the most amazing feeling moments in my entire life. It just felt so free, and I can't even describe it. When you're out there in South Dakota and there's buffalo and you're cruising around on a Harley, and it was funny. He told me at one of the camps, someone rode uh, a bullet bike in to town, and back then that was a no-no. And at one of the camps, they took this guy's bullet bike and hung it up on a tree behind a jet engine and melted it down. So yeah, that was the old Sturgis before it became all commercialized.
For me, I don't know what a bullet bike is.
Hmm. Like a Japanese made bike, like a
I see.
Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, or whatever. Yeah, you only, people only drove like probably Indians or Harleys back then in Sturgis. You didn't dare drive a bullet bike in.
It better be American made, basically.
Yes, yes.
That's the one. This is one from me, actually. Of all the main event players in WCW from 95 to 97 when you were with the company, I'm talking your Lex Lugers, your Hulk Hogan's, your Kevin Nash's, your Scott Halls, etc. You can name all the names. Who were the most approachable? Who were basically the guys who didn't treat themselves too seriously or be standoffish with the talent?
Wow. I hung out a lot with, at that time, Hugh Morris, Public Enemy. Um, oh gosh, I played a lot of cards with, because at the TV tapings, those days were long, so we played a lot of cards, and I played a lot of cards with Hacksaw, Colonel Parker, Ming and Barbarian, and great guys. They were so much fun. Good stories. Yeah.
Cribbage, or
gin.
gin rumming.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to play our first game, then we're going to give you a tiny bit of a break from me. Name association, going to give you a sentence, a description, and I want you to give me the first name that pops into your head when I say the sentence. And if there's a little story that goes with it, don't be afraid to throw it in there. First one is...
pause, bear with me. I've been hitting the head a lot.
Don't worry about it. Do not worry about it. Next one is... next one. First, I've been hitting the head too many times. First one, excuse me. Funniest person in the locker room. And this can be any locker room.
That would be, at the time, it would be either Ricky Morton or Brad Armstrong. Brad Armstrong was one of the funniest in the back. Hilarious. Yeah, and people won't believe it because when he'd be in the ring, it was all business. But in the back, hilarious.
Everyone will believe that because I might as well call that the Brad Armstrong. Just say Brad Armstrong. Everyone says Brad Armstrong. Everyone loves that dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Next one, last man standing at the bar in a drinking sense.
Me.
Come on. Okay, I should preface, can't say yourself.
Okay. All right. Oh, wow. Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Hard to remember at that time of the night who's still there. Oh, maybe I'll say Sandman.
Good, fine answer. Did you ever see Ric Flair do the whole buy a load of shots then dump it over his shoulder kind of thing? Or
no, but I've heard the stories, and I've heard. I'll tell you this story. I got stooged out eventually. I was in upstate New York. I can't remember if it was which city it was in, but for an indie. And I had an early flight out the next morning. So all the wrestlers were, we knew we were going to go to hit the bar afterwards. And all the wrestlers were going, we're going to get you so trashed for your flight because it was an early flight. And so I had one of the guys drive me, and we got to the bar first before everyone else. And I tipped the bartender and I tipped the waitress. And I said, we're going to be doing shots of Sambuca all night. I said, make mine a water. Because Sambuca is a clear, Mm-hmm. So, and everyone was taking turns buying trays of shots of Sambuca. And I was selling it too when I do that shot. I'd be like, oh, whatever. Well, the next morning when I got, one of the boys calls me and he goes, how you feeling? I go, well, I'm fine. Why? He goes, so many of the guys are sick today. So, I said, well, if they wouldn't have threatened to get me trashed,
Isn't that where the gargling rule came in? at some point. You know, the Jack Daniels gargling rule or something like that, because that sort of proves that you've drunk it.
Well, no, I was drinking mine, but they were
Oh,
water.
I know that, but like to
Yeah.
sort of prevent the over the shoulder or other
Oh, the over the
shenanigans.
shoulder. I've
Yeah.
never heard of the gargling rule, but I don't know. I've never seen someone just throw it over the shoulder. I don't know.
Well, you've never been in a bar
I
with
never
me then.
ran into that. Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe
I've done
I
that.
have seen someone standing next to either a garbage can or something else, and they'll just throw it in the garbage can, but not over the shoulder. That's too obvious, I think.
No, fair enough then. Next one is the most beautiful woman wrestler slash valet in real life.
Beautiful as in how? Looks, personality, everything.
Anything you want, I guess. Normally, I'd say for looks, but as a whole package.
There's a few. I can't single them out. I would say, man, I miss Sherry Martel. What a
Mm.
sweetheart. Sherry Martel, Francine. Francine, we've always been tight. We're still tight. We're still like brother and sister. We still keep in touch. There's so many sweethearts out there. Oh man, Luna Vachon. I miss Luna. She was another sweetheart. Um, I don't know, but those two are two of my favorites. Was years ago. Sherry Martel and Luna Vachon were always two of my favorite wrestlers slash valets.
And a few fine names as well. Biggest bully. Not going to say you, are you?
No. Oh, right. Yeah. I get in front of these guys who are 6'6" and six and poke them in the chest. I go, no, I don't want to say it. I
That's fine.
mean,
That's fine.
usually everyone in the business knows anyway. So.
Right. Most picked on, so most bullied, I guess.
Oh, wow. Hmm. In WCW, it was probably Disco Inferno.
How would
But
that manifest then?
because then he talked a lot and he would aggravate some of the veterans, and then they would finally, all right. I think one time, I don't know if it was the Steiners threw him out the door and into a bunch of bushes or so. Yeah, probably Disco at the time.
Next one is smelliest wrestler. My favorite question to ask.
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you who, but over the years on indies and stuff, guys who just won't clean their gear. It was disgusting. I hate when you come back after a match and you can smell the guy on you. It's just, come on, have a little hygiene, something. Wash your gear, anything.
Next one.
I won't even say his name, but I had a guy, his gear was like these old greasy coveralls, and his shoes looked like old boxing shoes or something that were just falling apart. He had them duct taped together on the around the feet and stuff, and his hair looked like he hadn't washed it in a month, just greasy. And every time he would go to pick me up, his hand smelled like urine. I was just so grossed out. It was just so disgusting.
He wasn't wearing like leather or anything, was he? Because I believe that's the kind of thing that absorbs the stench and you can never wash it off.
No, no. And his outfit looked like what I could describe as a boring rodeo clown. It was just, yeah.
Did you ever get the stench of icy hot out of your nostrils
Oh,
for years?
um, I hated the hot stuff because if it gets in your eyes, it's burning, and it would make it would just annoy my sinuses and make it hard to breathe and and irritate my throat and make me want to cough. So when guys would wear it, it just wasn't fun. But I a lot of matches I would take like the Vicks vapor rub and just line the inside of each nose or put it a little bit under each nostril, and it would help open up your sinuses and help you breathe better out there.
And I guess mask some of the smells as well. So that's
Yeah,
a good idea. The nicest person in wrestling.
Bobby Eaton. I WCW. I had a look in my hood. One of the seams was coming undone, and so I just asked in the locker room. I said, "Does anyone have a sewing kit?" And Bobby goes, "I do." And so I go over. I go to grab it. He grabs my hood and starts sewing it. And here I am. I'm sitting there going, "I'm nobody." And here's this legend sewing my hood together for me. It was just so surreal. But what a great guy.
I hear Bobby Eaton also had like the biggest bag as well. That he just seemed to have everything in it.
Oh yeah, it seemed like yeah, he was prepared for anything.
Where are we in this list? I haven't got my glass on. Most high strung, like edgy or nervous.
Hmm. Boy, I couldn't tell you because there's some guys you wrestle and they're nervous, and I have. It's probably someone I don't even can't remember what their name is or who they really were really because I throughout my whole career I've always done indies. The only time I didn't do indies was when I was in WCW and WWF. But ECW I could do indies, Ring of Honor I could do indies, TNA I could do indies. So I did indies through my entire career. So and most of those were guys I never heard of before, didn't know what they do, whatever. And a lot of those guys were pretty nervous. And I'd always have to tell them, relax. We're just going to go out there and have some fun.
Next one, sort of from one end to the other, is the most talented wrestler you ever worked.
Brad Armstrong.
Fine answer. Fine answer.
That was like I was in the ring with nobody. He did all the work for you. He kicked his own ass for you. You just had to go through the motions. It was amazing. It was like I was in the ring with no one. It was amazing. Smoothest wrestler ever. Best.
You actually predicted one of the future questions, smoothest wrestler. So there we go once again. Cheapest wrestler on the road.
Barry Horowitz.
Not the first time I've heard that name.
Barry Horowitz. I'll never forget. We were traveling back and forth for Global from Nashville to Dallas every week, and we'd always have to stop in Dallas at this Chinese restaurant because they had for lunch. It was like $3.97 or something, and it was horrible food. But he always had to stop there because it was the cheapest lunch you could get.
Was it a buffet by any chance?
I don't think. Can't remember if it was a buffet or it was just lunch specials, but it was brutal.
Next one, the crappiest building you ever worked.
Oh, that would be probably. I think it was a building in Metropolis where they have this Harrah's Casino there. And I don't think the building looked like it should have been condemned. I don't even know if it was legal to even hold a show or have people in the place.
So it was almost like a midnight rave. They just sort of just took it over and hope for the best.
I think so, but that one stands out to me. And I'm trying to think if there's so many. There were so many where you're wondering, we're probably not even supposed to be in here.
The grumpiest wrestler.
Grumpiest. Probably Ole Anderson.
Was he hanging about WCW much in the mid?
No, I saw him. I'm trying to think. I didn't run into him much, but the time I saw him, he wasn't in a good mood. But I've always heard he was always that way. But all I can say is from the first time I saw him, it wasn't, he wasn't happy.
The worst abuser of spray tan or baby oil.
Spray tan baby oil.
That's apart from Adam Cole at the moment, he's turning up like a Simpson, like every week at the moment.
Some of them are so orange, and they look like a Oompa Loompa or something. It's like you get a better color or something. A lot of them.
I know this is an AEW thing. We're not talking much about AEW, but have you seen the memes that are coming out recently where Adam Cole either hasn't tanned his hands or he hasn't tanned his knees for some reason?
Yes, I don't. And the problem there, I think, is he probably didn't put it on soon enough and let it dry. And so when you put your knee pads on, it's going to soak it up wherever it's at, and you got to let that stuff dry. In TNA, the office would get mad because the guys would come in and they put a stop. They said, no more spray tan or no more whatever tanning lotions because it would get on the canvas. And so during the show, you'd have all these tanning marks all over the canvas. They said, no more. But you have to let that settle for a day or so because on big shows, Mike Enos told me one time, he said, you never saw Hogan without a tan. So that's why I always made sure I had a good tan, especially when you're under the TV lights. You'll think you have a good tan. Those TV lights will flush you out and you're like, oh, I don't even look tan. So I always made sure I was good and dark. And then on special pay-per-views and stuff, I would go double dip. So I would go in the spray booth and get the spray tan. And then once it dried, I go in the ultra bronzing bed and then bake it in. So.
Did you have any tanning mishaps where as far as smearing the ring canvas or anything like
No,
that?
no, because I would do it usually a day or two before, just so it was always, good and dry.
Okay, advice for Adam Cole right there. Do it a day before at least. For goodness sake. And
And
don't.
then you can tell too when they're sweating, it starts to run. If you got to let it set in for a while.
I bet a lot of wrestlers, performers, when HD came in around 2008, were quite upset for one of those reasons with the spray tan and the sweating and stuff. It'd be more obvious.
Yeah, yeah, and I always just like to just get a real tan instead of the spray tan. And I know they say, "Oh, it's bad for you. You're going to get skin cancer and stuff." And here's the scary part. I've been tanning in tanning beds since they were invented in the late 80s. And that's when the bed, you can only be in the bed for like 3 or 4 minutes and you were torched. And I can't even imagine, now that the whole industry has changed. They have ultra bronzing beds that filter out all the bad burning rays and they'll just brown you and stuff. So it's expensive, but it's worth it. So I was just, I'll still, if it's a nice sunny day, I'm out in the yard doing yard work without my shirt on, getting a tan.
It's an investment in yourself.
It is. Plus, in ECW, if we got to the building early and it was a nice day, me and Tracy Smothers, we'd take our shirts off and go walk around the parking lot for an hour and get a last minute tan.
Good man. Good man. I like the investment in yourself. There was when you said before about duct taping boots, and I've recently seen something on, I don't know if it was some weird reality show where some kid went to TNA for a tryout, and Kurt Angle and Nick Aldis were staring at him as he had duct tape on his boots. And they would say, dude, laces are 99 cents. Like, you must be able to afford that, surely. It's one of those things where I think people can be too... You tell me otherwise, but people can be too... You can't spoil yourself enough as far as your aesthetics go in pro wrestling, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Like you said, it's an investment in yourself. And I've always believed you have to look the part. And, I mean, I don't want to pay my money to go see someone in the ring who looks like the neighbor's kid doing backyard wrestling. I always firmly believe you got to look the part. Hit the gym, get a tan, get professional looking gear, look the part. We're supposed to be superheroes in that ring and stand out, and when I broke in, it was still Land of the Giants, but I knew I had to look the part. And like, thank you for telling me I always came in looking in shape, but I always was told you got to look the part. And I was proud that when I would meet people, even early in my career, before I even did anything and got national exposure, and they didn't know what I do for a living, I heard a lot of times, anyone ever tell you look like a pro wrestler? I knew I was doing something right.
Not to, as I say, not to get you in any trouble, but there's maybe a couple of people, say no names, currently in the business right now, who you must want to buy them a gym membership for themselves. Just have it. Just try it once. You might enjoy it.
Well, I can't speak for everyone else, and that's one of my pet peeves is look the part. But personally, I could not have kept wrestling and taking all this punishment if I didn't hit the gym and and just train. And I learned you can't be a power lifter now because every time you go in that ring, you're doing damage to your body. And so I learned you have to train for endurance so your body can kind of, and it's I would say, and so body can kind of absorb this punishment, but you're still damaging your body. But it's just, there's no way in hell I could have kept going if I didn't hit the gym.
Did you ever avoid workouts, too much working out like that would impact your knees, for example?
I just didn't go real heavy because, if you go to me, like powerlifting, if you have I think that's why some guys, you'll see wrestlers tearing body parts, like tearing a pec or tearing a quad or something. I think you're probably lifting too heavy in the gym too.
So you're very much lower weight, higher rep chap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably the right
I mean, I
way.
would say I still trained hard, but and I just think you have to listen to your body because there's times too when you get in the gym, uh, you're just not feeling it. There's times I've been in the gym 5 minutes and I'm like, nope, and I'll walk out, just not feeling it today. And just got to listen to your body. And maybe that day it needs a rest.
Yeah, I'm coming up to 38 years of feeling like that. Straight.
Welcome to my world. I need a nap every day at 2 o'clock. Or yeah,
I we'll move on. We'll move. I was actually enjoying just not what I'd written down at all, more than what I'd written down there. We'll carry on with a few more, and then we'll have a quick break. Biggest stooge for the dirt sheets. Most people don't give an answer, but there you go.
I don't want to say, but I've I've got a couple answers, but I won't say. But that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Is to me, you're doing more damage to the industry we all want to make a living at.
Hmm.
I always thought you don't want to know what's going to happen in a movie ahead of time when you go to see it. Why do you want everyone to know what's going to happen in your match before they even go to the show and watch it? Stuff like that. And then plus, when that magician came out, that masked magician with the secrets of magic, I refused to watch it. I love watching magicians. I don't want to know how they're done. So why reveal all the secrets of wrestling? I mean, I know it has been, the curtain's been pulled wide open, but I think we should be trying to close the curtain. I mean, years ago we didn't have, internet or social media. Now you've got internet, you've got social media. You could use this stuff to further and help the business, further storylines, further angles. Use it to help the industry, not to air your dirty laundry and do more damage to the industry. Sorry, I didn't mean to go
No,
off.
please, no. Let's carry on with that then. Okay, I've got two questions. I'll ask you the first one first. Obviously, is why do people do it then? Why are so many people trying to give actively in the business? Trying to Effie the other day as we record this did a TikTok where basically I think he got Ricky Starks pulled from all the GCW shows. Why do people either air their dirty laundry or contact newsletter writers and stuff?
I can't speak for him why he did it, but years ago when it was just the sheets, a lot of the guys would leak info and stuff so they would get talked about more favorably in their matches and maybe get that extra star and whatever. It's like that's why. And now I think a lot of it is to get attention. It's like, are you starving that bad for attention? Just your 15 minutes in the ring isn't enough. You got to have attention 24/7. It's like, don't air the dirty laundry. Then it makes us, it's bad. It puts us all in a bad light. Now we look like just a bunch of immature children. It's just go to work, do your job. That's me. And to me, wrestling is it's the best job in the world. It's supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, we're doing something wrong. I can't think of a better job ever. We, it That's why I've given over half my life to pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling. I want it to stay alive and flourish. I want to continue to make a living at it. And it drives me nuts when people just want to do more damage to it. We all want to make a living at this. Build it up. Don't tear it down. Sorry, I don't mean to go off on that.
No, absolutely not. Who do you think actually does social media well? Because I've got three names for you: Drew McIntyre, MJF, CM Punk. I think they use social media for good as far as actually improving their standing in wrestling, but most people don't seem to.
I really don't look at it much. When I look at it, I like looking for like old memories. Like, oh, here's a old highlights of a match from back in whatever 80 something or 90 something, or just stuff like that. And every once in a while, I mean, you'll get tagged and stuff. One guy, when I first got Twitter, and I'm still not good with all this stuff. I just look at it just to keep up, and keep up with what's new and stuff like that in the wrestling business and who are some of the new up and comers and stuff. But someone tagged me one time and just said, "It's Jerry Lynn, die already." And normally I wouldn't say anything because when you have all the negativity, when you answer them, that's what they want. Now you give what they've said validity. And I just answered this guy and I just said, have patience. It'll come soon enough. Because I'm old. I don't have much time left, but I'll get there. I'll die soon. I'll get there. Have patience. So
it's exhausting, isn't it?
It is.
Hey, I mean, I'm a professional YouTuber. I get called every name under the sun every single day.
Oh, I've talked to some of our wrestlers. They'll go, man, they're crucifying me on social media. I go, why are you listening? How many matches have they had? They don't know how hard this is. They don't know what it takes. I said, and I tell them, I go, if you're willing to take all the good things that the fans are going to say about you, you got to be willing to take the bad too. You can't pick and choose. And I tell them when you're in the public eye, you're going to be under constant scrutiny. And I've even told my daughter this because of social media with her friends and stuff. I said, people can and will say whatever they want about you. Who cares? The one thing they can never take away from you is your work ethic. So no matter what they say, you go out there and bust your ass and give it your all. They will never take away your work ethic.
Fine words. And also, if you are too into social media, just delete it. Honestly, you'll be happier. Trust me on that one. Well, I'll ask you a few more of these and we'll have a little break. Loudest spot caller.
I've never worked with him, but I've always heard a lot of guys say John Cena.
That's a name that comes up quite a lot with that one.
So I couldn't tell. I'll tell you a story one time when I first was in Memphis. I had a head cold. So, and I wasn't used to driving up and down the mountains and stuff. So my ears were slugging up really bad. And I had a match with Dirty White Boy. And I wasn't used to his strong southern accent and my ears are plugged up and he's got me in a headlock or something and he's calling this spot and I'm like, what? And he calls the spot and I go, what? And finally he just grabs my chin and my head and turns so his ear is at his mouth and he goes, I said tackle, drop. And he starts I had to tell him after the match. I said, I am so sorry. I got a cold. My ears are plugged up. I couldn't hear a thing out there. But that's when you called everything out in the ring too. So
next one. The worst bump or move that you just hated to take?
Body slam.
Why? I thought they were one of the easiest. Or does it impact your knees? Or ankles?
Because people try to put you through the mat. No, let gravity do the work and use some body language. Let gravity do. No, they try and purposely throw you down as hard as they can. No, you can just use body language, follow through with your arms, and let gravity do the work. No, it's so many big guys just slamming me down so hard. It was ridiculous.
Most legit tough badass.
Oh, that could be Ming, Barbarian, Bad News Brown. Everyone will say the guy who trained me, Brad Ringens. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was a legit shooter. But years and years and years ago, you had to be a legit badass because if you were in a bar and lost a fight, you were fired because you lost all your legitimacy. So years and years ago, everyone was a legit badass.
Or teetotal.
Yeah.
One of the others. Penultimate one, most memorable backstage fights.
I didn't see a lot because my luck, I'd always get there too late, which, I wouldn't say luck, who wants to see it anyway? I want to go to work and have fun, but I missed it. I got there right after the Paul Orndorff Vader fight in WCW. But I heard it wasn't pretty, so.
And we'll end on this one. The strangest sights that you ever witnessed at the Philly Travelodge.
I never was at the Cylinder of Sin. Oh. That was before my time. I was usually at the Holiday Inn right by the big arenas in Philly there.
Was it just straight up debauchery?
Oh, yeah. Every single time? Usually there was at least 4 parties going on in different rooms on different floors. So everyone's going up and down elevators, going room to room. And I'll never forget, it was, I forgot his name at ECW, Jerry the Wall.
Oh, was he like Toots or Jerry Toot? I can't remember his real name.
I can't remember his real name, but him and Danny Dorian had a chop exchange in one of the rooms, and the room was packed with like 30 people or something. And it didn't last long because poor Danny. I think he took 2 chops and that was about it. But they took turns chopping each other, and it was brutal.
So Danny lost that then?
Yes.
That's the spirit. Okay then, so let's get to a bit of ECW. Dan Lowe music, not really a question, but a thanks from the fans, especially that RVD feud. Those two put on some of the best matches ever. Big Riggs wrote in, says, yeah, I'm not great at coming up with questions, but I could watch RVD and Jerry play Scrabble against one another. My absolute favourite matchup.
That'd probably be a very violent Scrabble game.
Cue! Shenanigans says, how did Jerry and Rob come up with all those spots? It was like a martial arts movie, but without the wires and no chance to reshoot. Ask him if Jerry likes martial arts and what his favourites, if they were part of your inspiration.
Well, I never did martial arts. I always wished I would have done some sort of martial art just for the flexibility alone. I think that's what helped Rob avoid a lot of injuries because before a show, he'd be in the ring stretching for an hour. But I always loved watching years ago on USA Network Kung Fu Theater, and but I never did any martial arts. But it was fun to watch. But what was the other part of the
No,
question?
how did you come up with these spots originally?
Oh, like I was telling you earlier, I looked at us as we were both good guys. So, and we, years and years ago, I never wanted to see two good guys wrestle. I wanted to see a good guy, bad guy fight. And so we were just trying to, I think, to make it exciting to have two good guys go at it and fun for us too. But, uh, and in each match, we tried to tell a story that we learned from the prior match. And so we would tweak things, or maybe the spot would get a little longer because we learned what the other guy was, kind of reading each other's minds and learning from the prior match, and just have the match change and evolve each match.
With that being said, Honest Reviewer has written in and says, how many times did RVD potato you with one of the kicks to the head?
I would need a calculator. I don't know. I just no.
What was the
There was a
kick that
few.
always? What was the kick that would like catch you the most, or that you would catch you off guard from Rob?
The high. Oh wow. The one that would catch me a lot was when he'd be on the top and just jump off and do that forward thrusting kick, or he called it the high kick. That would get you sometimes. Um, but he was quick though. Man, he was quick. So there's times when you saw me ducking his kicks, I was ducking for my life because they would come in fast. And there was one night we were just ad-libbing, just wrestling, exchanging holds. All of a sudden he jumps up and does this reverse thrusting kick and about pushes my eyeball to the back of my skull with his heel. And within 30 seconds, I can see my eye closing. That was a real fun one. And I realized that night, well, I didn't even know. I went in the shower afterwards and I went to blow my nose and my eye just went
Oh,
and shut. So here he had fractured my orbital bone, but I didn't go to the doctor or anything. I thought, what are they going to do? You can't put a cast on my head. So I just kept on wrestling next 2 nights in a row.
did you learn to avoid the kick more from
Oh, yeah.
that point on?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Next one, Extreme Pop says, did you smoke weed with Rob Van Dam during the 5 star? I'm not sure during the 5 star classics you both had. What was your form of partying? Any fun or wild stories about back with Rob? I guess.
Oh, I smoked back then, but I would always wait till I was done working. I could never do it before because I'd turn into a giggling schoolgirl. So there's no way I could have wrestled like that. But I couldn't function. And I always thought I was never going to do anything. I was never going to have a drink before a match because I always thought if I ended someone's career, I just couldn't live with myself if I screwed up because I did have a drink or I smoked before a match.
Next one is Ill Advised Films. He asks, how come as an underdog you lost every single match against RVD when he was already established as one of the best? Booking wise, you getting the victory would have only elevated your career but not hurt his. Do you agree with that?
Um, to me, like, how can I put this?
I was gonna say, it didn't hurt Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah, no, well, and that was different. Tommy was usually losing to heels, and get screwed over, which is okay because the money is in the chase. Because once you get it, where do you go from there? Especially when, like, the I liked my feud with Nigel in Ring of Honor, where I was, and me and Tyler Black were having the feud, or the how would you say it? We were challenging each other who was the number one contender, and then me chasing Nigel. And for me, the most fun is, like I said, it's in the chase and getting there. Then that's where the money is. That's the story. But once you win it, there's only one place to go: back down.
Mm-hmm. This is Salvatore M. I've already teed you up for this question because I wanted your response off camera. In early parts of the God's sake, In the early parts of the 2000s, there was a huge spot fest movement that infected the Northeast independents. This led to a lot of botched up video game car crash type matches where the wrestlers seemed like they were just doing choreographed movements rather than just working. Did you ever look at what the kids were doing and say to yourself, this is what I created?
It's, people say that we had a big influence on to what had happened, but I didn't mean for it to get to the point where it is, where it doesn't even look like two guys are trying to win a match. It just looks like a choreographed Cirque du Soleil exhibition. And so, because when Rob and I were doing our spots, we were actually trying to hit each other with wrestling moves. Like I would try and, one time he did the splits and I dropped the leg on his head. Well, of course, next time he's going to learn from that. And when I go to drop the leg, he's going to move and sit up, and we go from there. So that's the kind of the story we were telling. But we were trying to hit each other with wrestling moves. Like I would trip him. I'd try and drop an elbow on him. He'd move. He'd do that flip leg drop. I would move. And now we're at the stalemate. But here's the difference too. A lot of the guys, when they do these standoffs or whatever, they're not even at the end of it. They'll turn to the camera or just do a pose or look at the crowd and hold their arms out and do the Stewart and go, look what I can do, and beg for a reaction. At the end of me and Rob's, we're right away going after each other. And now we see we're both standing up and ready. That's the stalemate. Because we were still trying to stay on the offense, but we see the other guy's already ready. Now we're stopped dead in our tracks because we're both there ready. So it looked like we were still trying to go after each other. But you got the stalemate there. Instead of turning into the crowd and holding your arms out and going, look what I can do. Or looking at the hard cam and posing. Or we still made it look like we were trying to win a match. And like I said, we weren't doing kung fu theater exhibition. We were trying to hit each other with wrestling moves. We weren't doing, I don't even want to say um because I don't want to cut down other people's work. I mean, there's so many talented guys out there who can do stuff I never could do, but you can still make it look like you're trying to win a match.
Mm-hmm. If one was to ask you, what is the single one match with Rob Van Dam that you would put on a pedestal above all others? What would you tell people to go and watch?
It was my favorite match of ours. Wasn't one of our pay-per-views. It was at a TV taping at the ECW Arena in Philly, and I think it was in September, around September 18th of '99. And the story was, me and Rob were advertised to wrestle, and they started out the show showing an ambulance pulling away, and they said I got jumped by the Impact players, and they were taking me to the hospital. So the last match of the show, instead of me wrestling Rob, it was Lance. And then, of course, Justin ran in. I think Rhino ran in. And then I ran in to help. And then Johnny Smith came in, and now we were outnumbered, and the heels left me and Rob Lane. And then when the heels left, I was leaving, and Rob grabbed the mic and challenged me. And so I accepted the challenge, and we started wrestling. And that was my favorite match because how we had the fans that night. And the whole first half of the match, it was RVD, RVD. And the first spot of the match was a double down because we already had our asses kicked by the heels. So it was just selling right from the get-go. And we had an impromptu spot, a table spot where we didn't have to move it, touch it, nothing. And so it was a surprise. It came out of the middle of nowhere. So we didn't have to do any rearranging the furniture, nothing. And he just clotheslined me off the apron. I went through that, and they were helping me up and out to the back. And I stopped, and I pushed everyone off me, and I turned around and went back to the ring and continued the match. And that's when we had them, and we turned the tide. From that, the last half of the match, it was Jerry. And we had the place, they were blowing the roof off the place. And after one of the kickouts, we were close enough to each other. Rob says, fucking awesome. And I said to Rob, I go, we got him. And that was my favorite match of ours, just how we had the fans that night.
We're going to move on a little bit now to late ECW, and we're going to be talking about Don Callis quite a bit here. So, Anthony Alston says, towards the end of ECW, you were paired with Don Callis as a heel. In my opinion, there was a lot of meat left on that bone. Had ECW continued past 2001, how do you think your character would have evolved and progressed?
Oh, we were having so much fun. it was so easy. It was gonna be so all I had Don and I had a good chemistry, and just the stuff we were doing, like when he had the kid ask he asked the kid, "Who's your favorite wrestler?" And he says RVD, and he had to hold me back from kicking this little kid's ass and stuff. It was so much fun. And then we beat up some bum in an alley, and but I was having so much fun turning heel and getting everyone to hate my guts, and it was going to be so. I mean, it was a blast. I really enjoyed it. I always think every wrestler should learn both sides of the coin, learn how to be a babyface and learn how to be a heel. I think every wrestler should ref a match. Now we all know what to expect from each other out there.
I watched a match of yours. I think it was against Christian York or something like that, and it's not the Hammerstein. It might have been the Hammerstein, but what's the really?
I think it was, yeah.
And Don Callis comes out. He introduces you as the greatest technician, and then he says from the great state of Minneapolis. And then Callis also says he's also the greatest interview. And Joey Styles goes, "What?" It's absolutely fantastic. Really, really was. I want to talk about Don Callis a bit. I've said this time and again, one of the most underappreciated performers in maybe wrestling history. I know he's...
Yeah.
Talk about Don Callis for a minute, because I think he's one of the best managers that there's ever been.
Oh, I got to wrestle him years ago up in Canada, and it was great. No, the guy's a great heel. He's a character, but no, I've always gotten along great with Don, and like I said, him managing me, it was so much fun, and we had good chemistry. But he's always great at getting heat. He's just a great heel, and I always said one good heel with a ton of heat is worth more than a dozen baby faces.
Do you think, because I don't know if you can really judge it from the back, I guess, but when Don Callis walks out into an AEW crowd in 2024, the heat always feels more genuine towards him than pretty much anybody else. Am I reading that right?
No, yeah. He's always been that way.
How does he do it?
Psychology. This whole business is based on human emotion and psychology, and you got to know how to get under their skin. And a lot of guys now ignore the fans. No, it's up to us to grab them and get them involved emotionally. And there's too many guys now who are worried about their high spots and what moves they're going to do. No, it's up to us to get the crowd emotionally invested and engaged in us.
Civic Speed has written in and says, at the end of ECW, it seemed like you were about to begin a heel turn with Cyrus. Oh, no, that's pretty much the exact same question as before. I'm sorry. We'll move on. Louis Buda has written in and said, what were your plans in ECW after Guilty as Charged 2001 if the company didn't fold?
When I first went to ECW, right before I went, right in between WCW and ECW, I had a tryout match with WWF against Taka Michinoku on one of those Friday night specials. Mm-hmm. And then JR had told me at the time, he says, well, we can't promise you anything right now. We're just trying to get this light heavyweight thing off the ground. And I said, okay. So when I started ECW, someone called me up and said, you're on Raw tonight. I said, I can't be. I haven't done any TV. They said, well, you're in the brackets for the light heavyweight tournament. And I said, really? I said, they haven't even called me and asked me. So I called up Cornette to see what was going on. And he said, he told me what was going on. And I said, well, I called Paul Lee and told him what was going on. And I already committed to ECW. And Paul Lee, he said, well, don't do it unless they put you over. And I said, you're right. But I knew they weren't going to put me over anyway, but since I wasn't under contract with them. So I called up Cornette and told him, I can't do it. I've already committed to ECW, it was Cornette. Well, after the tournament happened and I wasn't there, JR called me and said, well, what happened? I said, well, you told me that day you couldn't promise me anything, and I'd already committed to ECW. And he understood, and he said, well, I just want to let you know when you're done there, you always have an open door here. So when ECW folded, they had, I think, Raw was coming in Minneapolis, and so I called up JR and asked him if he'd want to have a meeting, went down there, and JR signed me.
You sort of come in before the invasion, so at least you weren't tarred with that brush with the invasion guys, I guess, when you came in. What were the plans immediately as far as just putting the light heavyweight title on you? Did you feel that WWF would actually do right by this division and have like a proper cruiserweight thing going on?
Well, you never know. What didn't make sense to me was they told me, all right, you're a heel with no rhyme or reason. I thought, most of my career I've been a babyface, and all of a sudden I'm a heel with no rhyme or reason. At least let me do something bad to Jeff Hardy, instant heel, something like that. So it didn't make sense to me. And then and I didn't even know what was happening until I got into, I think it was in Chicago, and they said when I got there, they said, "Oh, we're gonna put the light heavyweight strap on you. You're going over Crash." I was like, "Okay," and they said, "But you're a heel and you're gonna cheat to win." I go, "Okay." And I cheated, won, the place still popped. And I get in the back, and Paulie says, "Wow," he says, "they're really surprised of the reaction you got." I said, "Why?" I said, "This was one of our big talents in ECW." And I said, even years before that, I did a lot of indies in Chicago, driving from Minneapolis to Chicago back and forth. So I've always worked a lot in Chicago. But, and then not long after I got there is when they bought WCW and ECW. Now we had too many guys. They had twice as many wrestlers as they needed. And a lot of them were built up superstars. And so I got hurt 6 months in, and I knew I was very expendable. That's the business, though.
Yeah, and their loss, quite frankly, as well as TNA's gain a little later down the line. We're going to just stick with ECW very briefly. Cyrus Cage wrote in and said, "Do you play yourself in the video games?" At least he didn't say with yourself. Were you ever a gamer?
I think I've tried it, but I didn't like the game because the controls were not good. Because if you didn't hit the buttons exactly right, it would just do the same thing over and over, just chop, chop, or whatever. It was not a very well done video game.
It was a reskin of a WWF game, I believe. Do you remember just everybody dicking around when they had to do their voiceovers?
I just remember having to go into a room and with the mic and just say some things for certain parts of the game. That's all I remember.
Did you have to go, ow, ooh, that all the grunting and such?
I think so. Yes, yes.
Did you need like any? Did you ever step into like any of those not rotoscope, but those image captures 360 kind of thing to get your likeness down for these things?
I did one for WWF, but I got fired before they made an action figure of me. So,
yeah, so
it would go around, yeah.
So there's a prototype maybe out there somewhere.
I doubt it. They probably didn't even go that far.
This sort of leads into that. What's your favorite bit of merchandise with you?
Probably. Oh my gosh. So I feel like I keep getting ribbed because someone said, they're coming out with the video game. And I show up at work and someone says, "Hey, you made the cover of the video game." I said, "Yeah, I did." I was excited. And I look at the cover and it's me cowering in fear while Rob's kicking a chair through my head. I'm like, ah. And then my ECW action figure comes out, and it's like all these others have cool weapons like a baseball bat, a 2x4, and a folding chair. And mine has an electric guitar. And I'm like, I don't even play guitar. And then they have cool motions, like they'll twist at the waist and throw a punch and stuff. And mine is the headbutt where you click the legs together and you bend over. And I'm thinking someone's ribbing me here. It's like, welcome to the penitentiary. But I would say my favorite just came out. Matt Cardona and Brian Myers came out with the Bendies, and they did the bloody one of me when I did Die with Steve Carino's blood. I think that's my favorite.
Now, I sort of know the answer, but did Paul arrange with you just a wonderful royalty system for any action figures or game appearances?
Nope.
Even though you were a cover star for one of the games?
No. That was the deal I made, though. I just wanted here's what I want, a weekly paycheck. But I did want pay-per-view bonuses, which never got, because I know I did semi-main and main quite a bit on some of the pay-per-views. But, when every other check after a while wasn't there, I wasn't really expecting any pay-per-view bonuses to show up either.
This is a question I do ask ECW talents. You don't have to say the number or anything if you don't want to, but how much does Paul Heyman owe you?
It's quite a bit, but, I know I'll never see it. But, and I think one year I must have done an apology tour because I buried Paulie in a lot of, because I wasn't happy being screwed out of a lot of money and blah blah blah. And I talked to I went one time. They were coming to Nashville, and I went down to say hi to Brock, and I forgot Paulie was managing them, so I saw Paulie, and I told Paulie, I said, I said the same thing that I said to Bischoff. I said, I buried you in a lot of promos. I said I wasn't happy, being screwed out of a lot of money. He says, and I don't blame you. And I told him, I said, when I think about it, you gave me a job and a payday. And I told him, I said, actually, I wish I could had a lot more time to work with you because the guy's got an incredible mind for the business. And so, we're good. We hugged it out and everything's all good. So,
Did he ever promise on his father's eyes that if he had to drive a cab to pay you back, he would?
no, I never got that one.
Oh, you never got that one. That's fine. With Stevie Richards, that I do a show with every week, cheap plug for myself. He said that recently he fell out with Paul because just before Stevie left for WCW, Paul tried to get him to sign a contract with the days and years and money blanked out. And he
Hang on a sec. I got to get this jabroni to fix the mic here.
Oh, 1 second.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lynn. I think we got everything fixed there.
Boo that man.
I'm sorry. Go on. I thought, well, let's drag Shane in here on the ECW thing.
Yeah, Stevie was once presented by Paul Heyman a contract where the days and years and money was blanked out. And he said, oh, we'll fill it in later. Just sign it now.
Oh, wow.
You never got
that?
No,
mine, actually, I think mine was just a handshake. That was it.
Did
at first, I'm trying to think if I did. I can't remember if I ever told you I've been hitting the head a lot. But yeah, our first one, it was just a handshake.
And one more. Was it 5 figures or 6 figures he owed you?
5.
We'll say decent 5 then. We'll move on to WWF. I'm going to ask you a couple of things about modern wrestling and blah, 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 and then I will thank you so much for your time. Now, WWF, quite a few people wrote into this. Before I get to one of the most important questions, I guess, why didn't you do the cradle pile driver in the WWF? Was pile drivers banned by that point?
Yes. I don't even know if Taker was doing the tombstone either. Yeah, I think they were banned. I wasn't even going to ask. I knew it, I wasn't even going to try and ask. So I just did, what was I doing? The tornado DDT.
Scene Play says, how much of your match on Sunday Night Heat versus Rob Van Dam was edited out?
Oh, yeah. When we first found out we were working each other, we were excited, but then we found out we had 5.5 minutes. And so we went to Paulie and said, what the hell? So Paulie, I think, got us an extra 3. So it ended up being 8.5. But when it aired, I realized, they edited out all my stuff. And so I could see the writing on the wall. I knew it was Showcase Rob. So, which is fine. At least we got to work once on WWF TV. So
yeah. Now this is the big question. I'm sure you've been asked this before. Night Porter, Silver Red Grunion, and all these other different usernames who've submitted basically the same thing. That WWE promo on Jim Ross, was that a shoot?
No. Paulie gave me the promo word for word.
Oh, really? Explain for people who don't know about this.
Oh, just at the end of the promo, I said, was that okay for you, JR? Was that a good enough promo or something like that? Just to make it look, I guess, edgy and like a shoot. It was supposed to look like that. But no, that's what I was given.
So just to set up, you were in WWF New York, the restaurant at the time?
Yes.
And you had the title belt and everything, and was it just one of those things where they just said, well, you're not on this pay-per-view, but we want you to... How did this basically come about?
I just found out, yeah, you're not, you're going to be cutting a live promo from the restaurant on the pay-per-view. So I wasn't going to have a match on it, but I was going to cut a live promo. And since I was a heel, I guess Paulie gave me the promo, and it made sense to bitch and complain about why I'm your light heavyweight champion. Why am I not on the pay-per-view? And just be disgruntled about it, which made sense.
Whose idea was it to do the guttural Judgment Day?
Paulie, he said, yeah, ended off with your, which I don't know. That was me at the time. I still am a big metalhead. A few weeks ago, me and Dutch from The Righteous and one of our photographers went and saw Dying Fetus, and I grabbed Dutch when I heard one of my favorite songs, and I grabbed him. I go, "Let's go!" And he was kind of like my linebacker, so I running around the pit, and I'm thinking. After I was done, and we did it a couple times, and after I was done, I'm like, "What am I doing? I'm 61 years old, and I'm still running around in mosh pits at a death metal." I couldn't help myself.
Dude, that's the way to be, man.
Oh, so
I don't know if you take requests, but Silver Red Grunion, or whatever the name is, says, I don't know if this counts, but I just need Jerry Lynn to please, just once reprise his line from Judgment Day 2001 during a WWE New York restaurant promo and say with bulging eyes, well, big whoopity do.
well, who did I get? I think that was the Adam Sandler thing, wasn't it? From Wedding Singer, I think. I think he's on the mic or something, or I can't remember where I got that. I stole it from someone, but it just, boy, he wants me to replicate that.
This is entirely up to you. If
Well, I
should you
could, I guess.
Okay.
It's not that big a deal, but I guess, well, big whoopity doo.
Well done. He says, that was the most quoted line with me and my friends forever. I'm not having a laugh. It was amazing. So there you go. I must have watched it at the time, but I didn't realize there was like basically a semi-shoot sort of promo against Jim Ross.
Oh.
I'm wondering if he knew it was coming.
Maybe he didn't. I don't know, but he wasn't mad at me. So, and it was cool. I think it was the next day. I'm trying to think because I knew I had to fly across. Yeah, it was the next day, Monday night at Raw. I had to fly across country, and Linda said, "I really liked your promo." And I was like, "Wow." I was floored. I was like, "Well, thank you."
Right, we're going to get to a bit of AEW stuff now. As I say, Jerry, for God's sake, works with AEW. I'm not going to ask anything too controversial. I know some people want to know some things about certain deals, but, tough luck. Now, that being said, so this is something that came out, I know, 18 months ago, 2 years ago. Me and Dutch talked about it ad nauseum. Adam Page at some point did an interview saying, I don't really ask for advice. And then that sort of from there span out to a thing where certain people were saying, no, most of the wrestlers don't ask for advice in AEW. What's your experience? Is that overblown? Because I've been told the opposite as well, as far as the young guys asking advice from the veterans, the producers such as yourself.
Well, I'll tell you this. When Jake and Arn were there and Tully, not a lot of guys were picking their brains. And even if I was assigned a match and I was stuck in a park, I would go to him and go, "You got any ideas? I'm stuck here." But so that really shocked me. I thought, you got this wealth of knowledge, and there was a few, but not a lot of guys picking their brains. Man, I would have been on them. But as far as me, like Hangman, I've had quite a few of his matches, and he's always been open to my suggestions and stuff. But maybe it's the way I put it. I don't say, "Oh no, your idea sucks," and that's it. I'll say, "Well, that really don't fit here, but here's a way you could do it." And I always give it examples too when I'm saying that's like it won't work of how I've failed in my career. Because when first thing I say when I do seminars is everything I preach to you, I am 100% guilty of. But that's how I've learned by other old timers telling me, "Hey, what are you doing out there?" And them explaining to me stuff. So when I try to tweak things, I always try and explain to them why it makes better sense this way, or I don't just say, "No, your idea sucks," and that's it. So I've usually everyone seems pretty open to it. I just had Ricochet the first time I got to work with him, and I kept telling him, "Now tell me if I'm being overbearing." He says, "No, no, no." He says, "I like this." He says, "All the little things you've added make the match more serious." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're supposed to make this look serious, like we're trying to win a match." So it was a pleasant surprise.
What wrestlers currently or in the past 5 years with AEW have you personally taken under your wing, or maybe saw, as like a personal project, would you say?
Oh, I've helped out a lot of them. It just the one if I have ones that come up and ask me or say, "Will you watch one of my matches with me?" I'll help them out. And so it's just the ones that want to keep picking my brain, so to speak. So I've helped a lot of them out. Like Oh, let me think. Ethan Page, Will Hobbs, Ricky Starks, Jamie Hayter, Tony Storm. Uh, I'm trying to think. Even trying to think. Wow, this is hard. It's a since working here, I feel like I've watched 5,000 matches in the last 5 years, so everything's kind of like a blur, you know. But even like Anna Jay, trying to think who else. Who else have I had a lot? But
Are
you
you
know,
are you the
I don't
head
know.
agent in AEW, or is there a head agent, or is everyone sort of on the same keel? I guess as far as
No,
the
no.
producers.
There's I think like CD and Pat Buck are like head agents and talent coordinators also. So
Now, what's one habit? You don't have to limit yourself to one, but what's one habit that wrestlers they do today that man really bug you? And it doesn't matter how many times you say don't do it, they do it.
beg the crowd, beg the crowd for a reaction. I'll never forget. I'm telling you a lot of stuff I say in my seminars. Years and years ago, I had a big guy had me in a bear hug, and this is probably in the late '80s, early '90s, and Baron von Raschke was on the show. And to try and get the crowd going, what do? I start clapping my hands behind the guy's head while he's got me in a bear hug. I get in the back, and Baron von Raschke goes, "What the hell are you call that out there?" I go, "What do you mean?" He says, "If a guy that size is crushing your spine, are you going to clap behind his head?" I said, "No. You're going to try and get his hands undone and get him off you." He says, "You never beg the crowd." He said, "You get them with your work rate. You get them with your work." And that's one thing that drives me nuts is everyone will beg the crowd now. Like they'll do a move, and instead of trying to pin the guy and win the match, they stand up and do the Stewart from Mad TV and go, "Look what I can do," and beg for a reaction from the crowd. We just told everyone you don't care about winning this match because you didn't try and pin the guy after you did this spectacular move. Stuff like that.
What's the most amount of Canadian destroyers you've seen in one match?
There may be some of them 4-way or 6-man scrambles where, maybe, I don't know, off the head, I can think of like 3 or 4 because all of a sudden it'll be around the horn, the big waterfall, everyone take a turn. So, yeah, I couldn't tell you for sure. I know at least 3 or 4.
I was. This is just going into the minutiae. I saw a video the other day. I think he's a social media like wrestler, I guess, but he's also a wrestler, and he's called like the veteran Jack Vaughan, and he was showing the difference between indie pin and real pin. And that's one of those things where I may have talked about that with Sabu, is that there was someone who really cared about the legitimacy of every pin he did. He put crush the elbows in. If he's going to hook the leg, he's going to loop and grasp his own hands, that kind of thing. Make it look like every pin could actually pin someone. Just small things like that, do you think, get lost over time?
Yes. It's these small, small details that make all the difference in the world. And the fans may not realize exactly why, but I've had moments in matches where something just didn't look right. And you hear that entire crowd do the collective Scooby, uh-huh. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a good because they don't know exactly why, but they can tell something just didn't look right. You know what I mean? And it's our job, even though the curtain's been pulled wide open, it's still our job to suspend their belief for 2 hours. And they want us to, because when they see something that looks so silly, so fake, so bullshit, they'll even go, "Oh, come on." They want us to suspend their belief for 2 hours. And I think so many have given up. They want to stay indie-rific. They don't want to be professional. They want to do the same cliche, stupid, silly shit that makes it not even look like you're trying to win a match. They want us to suspend their belief still.
When did you go from, as you said yourself, Baron von Raschke or whoever else, where you were doing, the basic young boy stuff, not realizing, begging the crowd and all that kind of thing? When do you go from the old Jerry Lynn to the good worker Jerry Lynn that wouldn't pander to the crowd and perform how you would like to see a wrestler perform?
Well, I realized, like, when I broke in, like I said, the curtain wasn't pulled wide open. It was drilled in your head, protect the business, kayfabe it, make them think this is real. And I did that through my entire career. But I realized as the business changed, you have to be willing to change with it too. And I'm like, but there's certain basic fundamentals we always stick to. But I realized, like, say, I was talking to one time Road Dogg after a match I had. Say the heel did something, the heel maybe on the lockup gave me an arm drag or something. He got up and started doing some silly dance, like mocking me. Well, now I realized after the match I didn't do it, but I thought, well, all I got to do is out wrestle him a little fancier, embarrass him, get up and do his dance back to him, and maybe add a little couple hip thrusts to piss him off. Now he can come charging. Here's a drop to hold. Boom, I'll grab a hold. Now I'm on top. So I can still add the little entertainment aspect, but do it in a way where he's already done it, but I do it back a little differently just to get under his skin to piss him off. So I realized there's ways of adding the entertainment aspect, but still making it look like you're still trying to win a match.
If I know you don't like listen Mount Rushmores and that kind of thing, but who in AEW currently would you say were the guys who just get it? Who are the guys who've just fully rounded, get everything you're saying? You don't even need to tell them; they know it. Especially the young guys, let's say.
Boy, I don't know. Tell you the truth.
Don't steam into me with names,
Oh man, I don't want to talk too much about the company I'm currently working and about the guys because I'll tell you this: you never stop learning in this business. That's what I really love about it, and that's what I hated about the most about having to quit wrestling in the ring. There's so much more I wanted to learn. I wanted to get so much better, and probably in the last 2 months of my career when I was still wrestling, I did an interview, and this guy asked me, he goes, "At what point in your career do you think you were at your best?" And I said, "Never. I knew I always had room for improvement. I always wanted to get better." So I really, I feel funny critiquing, how can I say this? At work, that's my job, is to try and help you get better and stuff and critique and stuff. But I don't that's behind the scenes and personal with the guys. I don't like doing it out in the public. You know what I mean?
Yeah, rightly so. Don't worry, I'm going to get off AEW now. So no more AEW questions.
Well, goodness. You can ask me. It's just I don't want to, get personal. That's behind the scenes and between me and the wrestlers.
Absolutely. A very, very indeed respectable stance to take as well. With the few minutes we have left before Moose or whoever gives you the hook and drags you away from me, we're going to do one last game. We're going to get as far through as possible for the next few minutes. I'm essentially name association, but reversed. I'm going to give you a name. Tell us what you think about them. I'm sure they're going to be, for the most part, cool, or they might even have a funny story attached to them. So the first name is Kid Cash, and why was he always borrowing your tights?
Actually, I think he bought them and just changed the little logos on the sides to yin-yang symbols and stuff. But no, I always loved wrestling Kid Cash. He would get so much heat, and it would be so easy. He was, I always said if I was a heel, when I turned heel, I hoped I could do it as good as him because it didn't matter. He got so much heat. He was one of the best at getting heat. And I'll never forget at the fairgrounds in Nashville, he's beginning of the match. He's out there on the floor, just getting them all riled up. And finally I'm going, all right, we got to get this match started. So I jump out and go to the floor. Well, I was getting showered with cups of Cokes and stuff. It was just crazy how much debris was flying. And I grabbed him and threw him in the ring and we got underway. But yeah, it was always fun working with him.
Sounds like almost white heat at that point, where they were ready to kill you before the match even started.
Yes. Yeah.
Speaking of Nashville and the fairgrounds, Jamie Dundee.
Oh, I love Jamie. Oh, never a dull moment with Jamie. Oh, my God. Yeah, I'll never forget an ECW. We're I think it was O'Hare at the airport, and we're waiting for... I think we were waiting for Jamie, because we all had a car or whatever. And you could hear him all the way across the airport coming down the escalator, yelling, "Hey!" Jamie's hilarious. And oh my God, here's a funny story. Of course, my wife knows Jamie. So years ago, I loved Guitar Hero, loved playing Guitar Hero. So I had it I was playing. Anyway, I can't remember. It was still hooked up on the TV in the living room and stuff. And I got out of the shower and I saw it and I was all dried off, but I was naked. And I went over and started playing Guitar Hero naked in the living room. And I didn't know. My wife took a picture of me from behind playing Guitar Hero. And I had a show coming up at the Stadium Inn in Nashville, and Jamie was on it. So I'm sitting in the locker room getting dressed, and Jamie comes in. And the first thing he yells out through the whole locker room is, "Hey, who here likes to play Guitar Hero naked?" And I just put my head down in shame and raised my hand. It was like my wife had sent him the picture. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. Oh my God.
You didn't print it out or anything, though, for you?
No, no, no.
At least it was that.
Yeah.
Tyler Black, for people who don't know, Seth Rollins.
Oh, incredible. I first wrestled him in AAW in Chicago. And I wrestled him in Davenport. I think they had ran an indie in an old closed down Walgreens drugstore. So, and then quite a few times in Ring of Honor. But I always enjoyed wrestling Tyler. He's another one of them talented guys who can do anything. And I knew he was headed for big things.
The next one, this is a question I didn't actually get to. Lance Storm is the name, but someone also wrote in asking about that. Was it the no bump match or you?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to think how the first time was an accident because we started having matches when we had really bad houses. We weren't going to go out there and kill ourselves, but we still gave them hot action. And one match, we had a big fish out of water spot. We were trying to do it as long as one we could imagine. And at the end of it, we were going to, all three of us get up, even the ref, and be wobbly. And all three of us, including the ref, just fall back and collapse from the exhaustion. Well, the last roll up got funky and got messed up. So we ended up not taking the bump. And that was going to be the only bump in the match. So we got in the back, and I think, was it the ref said it or something? Somehow we realized we didn't take a bump in that match because that was going to be the only bump, and it never happened. But I remember, I think it was in Pensacola. It was one of them venues where the ring was on a stage. You had a couple rows of chairs around on the ring on the stage, but everyone else was in the auditorium. And it wasn't a good house. So we figured, all right, we're going to do our no bump match. And we did, but the fans couldn't tell. We gave them some good act. We didn't count the head scissors because you could roll out of it and stuff like that. We still gave them some good action, Ranas and stuff. And Gabe Sapolsky was he did the fan cam. And I didn't know Lance did it, but right after the pinfall, he rolled out of the ring, looked right into the handheld, and he goes, "Hell of a match, no bumps." So I get in the back, and me and Lance are talking. Gabe comes running in the back. He goes, "You're right. You guys didn't take a bump." So he didn't even know, because we still just kept the action going.
Next one is if you can still hear me, I'll do a quick outro. The camera's died over on that side, everybody,
okay,
so we'll have to do a part 2 at some point, maybe, if Jerry's going to be kind of... Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again next time.